I'm Logan Crawford, and right now on Spotlight, we're delving into the captivating world of The Vibrating Pond by Nigel Howse. Spanning over 4 decades of literary craftsmanship, this collection of fiction short stories offers a profound exploration of human experience, enriched with new material in its second edition. Nigel Howse, originally inspired by his poetic work, The Hammerbird, invites readers into his unique narrative landscapes where each story vibrates with its own distinct frequency. We're delighted to have this very talented author join us here today on Spotlight. We thank our team at Prime 7 Media for helping us put him in the spotlight today. And we ask viewers like you to support writers like him by subscribing to our channel and by purchasing his wonderful work. The links are below this interview. Nigel, great to see you here today on Spotlight.
Thank you very much, Logan. It's very fine to meet you. I really appreciate the time. You know, a fantastic introduction to me and to my work. I can't be more pleased, to be honest. I'm very pleased to be here with you today. I've had a very nice exchange with your colleague, Josh. We've had one or two, chances to get things moving. With his help, I've been sort of tutored and I feel more confident. And it's great to be here today, So, it's an interesting fact that you're here today. I do feel this is kind of a culmination to what I've been doing. With the book, it was printed basically in the UK and in America. The second, just excuse me for a second. Yes, it was with the Universal Breakthrough. Sort of the book came out initially in that form, like that paperback and the ebooks. That's all kind of the modern way, isn't it now?
Yeah.
And then it came out. I got the bigger book, which I quite like, in that sort of larger format.
Yeah.
I kind of realized as I was sort of working and getting the pieces out that there is a sort of connection, and that's really probably why I chose the title, The Vibrating Pond, because the old terminology of the pond, that's the Atlantic, and we have this united kind of connection, don't we, between America and good old British Isles. I've probably been a bit sort of ingenious, maybe a little bit taking advantage of that particular link, but the work, as I was sort of writing it, gradually became more and more, in a way, connected with my understanding of what America stands for. And obviously my work is quite sort of personal, but it does have sort of resonance with, I think, some American, way of life and some of the things that I kind of became aware of,
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Tell the folks at home what your book is basically about, The Vibrating Pond.
Well, it's quite hard to really describe. I've kind of tried to fathom and given an encapsulated, simple explanation about what it's about. I mean, it's made up, a lot of people call it poetry. I suppose really it's more sort of poetic prose. It's probably my own style. And in a way, it is written over quite a long time. And when I did the second book, when it came out in the second version, I didn't have it all written out and printed out in the form in which I sort of had written, one thing followed the next. So I sort of jumbled them up a little bit, but some of it is really about my own sort of personal history. And that, in a way, probably for an American reader is probably of some interest. One of the early things one of the works I did quite later on, I put quite to the beginning of the book, which is really about Sutton Hoo, which is probably quite an international site of interest because it's quite near to where I live, actually, Sutton Hoo. It's a place where one of the first, I think it's Anglo-Saxon kings, the burial site was actually excavated in just about sort of the middle of the Second World War, and they found all these fantastic ornaments of gold and regalia from the buried king in the ship. So, there are, I sort of like the first day of my school as a primary, I did remember very consciously when I first started the primary school attendance, sort of remembering one or two of the very early pupils. I mean, that was my first day at school. I remember the names, and one particular girl I remember screaming her head off in sort of fear and anxiety, and that sort of stuck with me. So I wrote about the school. My sisters were attending to it as well. Um, and I wrote a long piece when I was doing my first. I did this course with a playwright, and she said, try and observe something local. And again, that's in the book. It's about the Deben, which is very much adjacent to where that burial site was first found.
Mhm.
I mean, I like to think some of the pieces stand out as having lots of sort of humor in them.
Yeah.
They're not just observational and dry. And I think that's what, to me, my experience of the imagination is about. It allows you to sort of free up your voice and have the freedom of expression, and being a bit playful in the way one talks about things.
Absolutely. Is there a favorite? It's like choosing among your children, but is there a favorite story within the pages of that book that you
Well, I like two particularly. I do like VW Vet, which
Mhm.
is a bit outrageous. It's a bit almost like a film set, um, where the old rusty VW van is taken out for a holiday at Eastbourne, which is on the sort of west coast of Britain, and it becomes a sort of a fighting force to fight off invading sharks. And I mean, that's a bit of a surreal poetic license. I think sometimes when you're writing, you can introduce rather outlandish and strange and surrealistic ideas. So that's the way sometimes my mind works, or when I narrate things, I like to introduce something a little bit unexplained or a little bit unusual. And the other one was Helium Liftoff. I had a nice holiday in Canada at the turn of the century to my cousins in Saskatchewan, and we used to go out. He doesn't have his farm in Saskatchewan anymore. He does keep in touch, but it was quite interesting because we were sort of there and helping with some of the harvesting. I was out with him on his combine harvester, and he pointed out to me the coyote were around in the farm. I'd never seen a coyote in my life before, and I came up with this story where the coyote, they are quite sort of sly. I mean, we have quite a history about and view about foxes in Britain, and wolves. They are of the carnivorous wolf family, and they can be quite, sly and unpredictable, or even aggressive. So, but you have to read the story, but it
Yeah.
is quite amusing, I think.
Absolutely, absolutely. I particularly love the story about the VW bus because I
Oh
have
yeah,
a VW bus.
what you
And
do?
whenever I get behind the wheel of that big bus, I feel like I can go magical places. There's something about Volkswagen buses that kind of
Yeah,
transport you, right?
interesting. Yes,
Yeah.
my uncle had, when we were kids, he used to come out, visit us and take us out. He
Mm.
had one of the, early Beatles. He was in the RAF. I
Mm.
never quite understood why he would choose a VW Beetle, but because I think the engine, if I remember, was in the back of the
Yep,
car. And
absolutely.
that always seemed a bit curious. But it was a lovely, lovely vehicle. This sort of Beetle shape. Um, yeah, so maybe that had got some connections why I brought up VW.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And the
So
twist,
this is your second book. So you wrote the book of poetry, and now you've written The Vibrating Pond. Are you working on anything else?
I am. I did actually. That's the first book. The Hammerbird. That's where the
Right.
science is. If you can see it. Sorry.
Yep. There
And
you
the
go. Yep. The
and
Hammerbird.
then I brought that out. That's another little book of poetry with prose in it.
Okay.
And yeah, they were the two first books. But I have written quite a lot of other things. Um, One came out in a library, so it was just sort of local edition that was on the shelves in one of my local libraries, and that wasn't ever published. And when I did my art degree, I did a short novella called Captivation, and that's never been published. What's happening at the moment, I'm hoping to get regularly published,
Mm.
because these are all, like, we call it in Britain, we call it, what's the term? I've forgotten what we call it now, actually. It's just really vanity press.
Right. Yeah.
It's not regular publishing, so you don't really sort of get any royalties for the work.
Right.
At the moment, I've got an agent who's going to possibly, help me get something regularly published.
Mm-hmm.
So that would be good,
Well, your work is wonderful. I'm glad it's out there in the world. I know readers would truly enjoy it, and it's easy to consume. It's a series of short stories, so you can read one a day, a couple at a time. Some
Yes.
you'll want to reread because, as Nigel said, it's basically poetic prose. So
Yeah.
it's really beautifully written and inspired stories for sure. The name of the book is The Vibrating Pond by Nigel Howse. It spans over 4 decades of literary craftsmanship. It's a collection of fiction short stories that offers a profound exploration of the human experience. And there is even more material in the second edition that is out. Nigel, thank you so much for joining us here today on Spotlight.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
I enjoyed our talk.
Lovely to speak to you. Thank you, Logan. Appreciate the time. Thank you.
Thank you. And to the folks at home, I'm Logan Crawford, thanking you for your time this time. Until next time on Spotlight.